Trout routes combine stream maps and river data to help you find fishing access faster. Be confident on the water with fishing access points, real-time stream gauges, and public access, now brought to you by Onyx Maps. Whether you're looking for blue lines, gold medal rivers, or something new in your backyard, Trout Routes has the data to get you on the water fast. Destination Angler podcast listeners can try 1 month of Trout Routes Pro for free by clicking on the link in the episode description. Do what I do and put more access in your hands and explore the water you love with Trout Routes today. This week on the Destination Angler.
He tied on a streamer. I was rowing at this point. We were doing pretty well that day to this point, but we hadn't caught anything massive. But he made, the perfect cast in the perfect spot, and a big, 22 plus inch brown trout with shoulders, really great body condition. Just hit it like brown trout do. It took about 2 kicks, and it broke his leader and tippet so hard, that it ricocheted back and shot over his right shoulder.
Is that right?
And I was like, oh man, that was a great fish. What are you using?
And that was Sage Unsworth with a story from the South Fork. Hey, if you like the show, please share it with a buddy. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures especially designed for your level of experience and budget. By Adamsbuilt Fishing Gear, the trusted source for quality fly fishing gear built to last at an affordable price. And by Trout Routes. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we head on over to the technical waters of the Truckee River on the border of Nevada and California for some gigantic trout. Then we venture into the backcountry of Alaska for giant rainbows and bears. Be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on Colorado's Able Ranch with owner, ranch broker, and the largest stream restoration expert in the West, Clint Pacco, who gives us the lowdown on this incredible 3-mile stretch of the South Platte River, along with the ins and outs of designing trout streams and selling ranches. You won't want to miss these shows. Hey, and be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch all the Destination Angler episodes coming your way. And now you can catch the Destination Angler podcast on YouTube. And today our destination is the legendary South Fork of the Snake River, a world-famous blue ribbon fishery in eastern Idaho loaded with wild rainbow, browns, and Yellowstone cutthroat trout, not to mention jaw-dropping scenery, beastly-sized trout, and prolific hatches that dreams are made of. Joining me is Sage Unsworth, regional fisheries biologist, expert, angler, and fifth-generation Idahoan, who gives us the skinny on the South Fork from top to bottom, covering the top sections anglers need to know about, selective trout strategies, and the science behind fish counts and electroshocking. And we also cover the controversial rainbow trout management program to conserve Yellowstone cutthroat trout and why it just might be working, and why you can't be a jerk as a fisheries biologist. Stick around to the end for a great story of squirrel-induced starvation and the do's and don'ts of fish handling. Hey, you might be surprised by what you hear. Well, let's hit the South Fork with Sage. Hey, everybody. Today we've got a really great show lined up for you. We're going to talk about the legendary South Fork of the Snake River. Oh, man. This is one of the finest places on the planet to chase wild trout. Rainbows, browns, cutbows, Yellowstone cutthroat trout. And joining me to tell us all about it is Sage Unsworth, who's from the Idaho Fish and Game, just happens to be the regional fisheries biologist for this super famous stretch of water. Sage, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I always enjoy talking about the South Fork.
You bet. Did I get your title right?
Yes, absolutely.
Very good. So a little about Sage. He's a fifth-generation Idahoan. Grew up in the southwest corner of the state. I think that means Boise.
It means Boise.
Okay. All right. One of the fastest growing cities in America now. Did you want to get out of Boise for that reason?
I didn't know that at the time, but now looking back, I'm glad I got out of it there when I did.
Yeah. I just talked to a buddy who lives there. He's like, he can't even drive to the corner drugstore anymore. It's so crowded. But all the people from Boise, I've been there. I love Boise. I'm a big fan, but I hear it is getting crowded. Anyway, attended Montana State, studied ecology and conservation biology with a major in literature. We'll have to double click on that one a little bit. So went to grad school, University of Idaho, spent most of his time, sounds like studying bull trout on the headwaters of Kelly Creek. Is that right?
The St. Joe River.
Oh, St. Joe. Okay, gotcha. There you go. That's beautiful up there. So anyway, Sage, he's one fishy guy, and we're going to hear all about these things. So anyway, so what's the story with the minor in literature?
Just always been a fan of literature, reading books and or writing as well.
Cool.
And also of journalism. That was actually for a brief time. That was my degree when I first came out of high school. I thought maybe
Nice.
I was going to go down that route, be kind of an outdoor writer type of a cat. And no, I had taken enough literature courses in kind of my electives that it only took one or two more to get the minor. So I went.
Yeah. Nice. Are you doing some writing now? I know you're writing reports, but are you doing like just some fun writing?
I do a fair amount of kind of just creative writing, a lot of sort of jotting, some short story stuff or kind of offbeat poetry. But yeah, here and there,
How
I'll do
about
some.
that? You're a creative type, I think.
I try to be. I think it makes a good scientist.
Yeah. Do you play an instrument?
I don't. No, I kick myself for that.
All right. There's still time.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, all right. So let's just talk about this. So this region of the world, man, this is really loaded. I think most people on the show, heard a lot of the names of these rivers. But what would you say makes this such a mecca for fly anglers? This part of the world that you're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it starts with the rivers, the fact that we have a lot of them and that they're still in relatively good shape compared to many of the streams across America or the world.
What do you mean good shape? Relatively good shape. What does that
I
mean?
mean, we have there is development and there certainly is water modification like dams and stuff within
Okay.
throughout the system. We don't have any major pollution issues. For the most part, has been some historic mining and stuff that's occurred in some of the drainages, and then some current in some of the drainages south of Idaho Falls or of the South Fork of the Snake River. But by and large, they're intact. The native taxa that were there are still there for the most part. Some of the reason that makes them just so productive is the lithography too. I mean, we have much of this area is basalt. It allows a lot of high nutrient load into the river, or good nutrients, not like fertilizer type nutrients.
Right.
And that grows insects, and obviously fish love those, trout in particular. So
You got to grow insects to grow trout.
yes, yeah. I think that's really what comes down to it. Is we're high elevation. We have great snowpack that feeds much of our rivers. The same, the Yellowstone National Park essentially is some of the highest snowfall in the nation occurs in this region. So we have most years ample water and it's cold, and we have high productivity, and so we have a lot of food.
Yeah. Would you say your fish per mile is higher than the average trout stream?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the fish per mile in the South Fork? Any sense of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2024, fish per mile was just under 4,300 fish per mile. That's
Wow.
trout. That is Yellowstone cutthroat trout, rainbow trout, and brown trout combined. The 10-year average is 4,500, and it fluctuates 2 or 300 fish per year, but in general, it's quite stable.
Okay. How do you count? Like, what's the smallest fish you count?
152 centimeters is the smallest fish that we'll count.
How big is that in inches?
That's what would that be? About just over 6 inches.
Okay, so 6 inches. I always wonder how they do that. And I was, because the South Fork's a really wide river, isn't it?
Yes.
So, like, if I'm talking about a river that's 100 feet across and it's got 4,500 fish per mile, and that thing is packed. South Fork being, how wide is it in some places? 100 yards? I don't know.
There's some areas it's 100 yards, but I would say it averages 40 to 60 yards in that range. We'll say 50 yards.
Okay.
For the
Okay.
majority
Still,
of it.
that's a bunch of trout. Do you guys look at like Do you kind of layer like the number of large trout and, so you've got like bands of trout, like 6 to 10, 10 to 15, 15. Do you guys look at that? What's that profile looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will kind of identify the size structure, is what we'll call it, in the fisheries world, to to get an idea of how that's distributed. Fish, I mean, there's always going to be, unless you have a bad year where recruitment failed or survival of young fish for some reason was affected, there'll always be more little fish than big fish in a system.
Yeah.
It's just how that kind of type life curve works. But we're sitting at an average size of just over 12 fish within, or excuse me, 12 inches within our samples. We regularly catch brown trout into above 27 inches, 27 to 28 inch range during our samples. We
Wow.
also see cutthroat trout and rainbow trout exceed 22 inches frequently. And rainbow trout are larger than that. You can see them into the mid to high 20s even, but that's rarer than the brown trout.
That's super cool. How do you sample a river? Is it electroshocking or what are you guys doing?
Yep. So we use electrofishing with jet boats and a mark recapture method. So we go out for a couple days. We have two trend sites, one in the lower river and one in the upper river. They're each a little under 2 miles in length. We go out there, we mark fish 1 week with just a fin clip or a hole punch into their caudal fin, their kind of swimming fin on the back. And then a week later, we come back and we repeat that exact same effort. And from that, we can plug those numbers into a mark recapture equation and get an estimate of how many fish we have, as well as the kind of confidence intervals or bounds around our estimate.
Oh, cool. Why do you have to do it twice? Why wouldn't just one time work?
One time work. Yeah. So there has been some studies that have been done. So comparing an actual abundance estimate, which is what we get, to a relative abundance or catch per unit effort, which is what it would be if we had just a single pass. And at that, you're just kind of estimating, or you're not estimating, you're counting how many fish you caught in a given amount of time that you spent sampling. And in a large water body with slightly variable flows, it's dynamic. So the morphology of the stream changes year to year. This is a tailwater fishery, so it doesn't change as much as other rivers like the Yellowstone, for example. But the relationship between that catch per unit effort estimate and our true abundance estimate don't always correlate or line up perfect. Sometimes it works out really well, but it doesn't always. And so we want to get a true estimate of the fishery, and that's why we do a mark recapture.
You do it twice. Interesting. I mean, do you end up most of the fish you catch the second time have been marked?
No, the vast majority have not, which is good.
Really?
Yep. So the fewer fish that you catch during your recapture run, the second run that we call it, the higher your abundance estimate will be. That's just a
Yeah.
product of the equation. So we maybe catch 5 to 15% of the fish that we mark.
Okay. So you can then estimate. It's like a sample size, and you estimate from there based on a sample size, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So you never get all the fish in the river. Like some of them just don't. So you come in and you put the electroshock stuff in there, and they just belly up, and you scoop them up, measure them, and
Yep, absolutely. So we run the jet boats downstream. So the boat's facing downstream. It has the electrodes hanging off of the front. We have these infinity boxes which control the output, the type of current or the type of electricity that we're putting out, whether it's AC or DC,
yeah.
and then how frequently it is pulsing, the frequency of the electricity, and then also like the voltage and amperage. So we can control all of that to fine tune it for what species we're targeting. And yep, they get temporarily stunned, creates a taxic response so that they're not belly up necessarily, but they sort of swim to the anode. And when they get close to the electrical field, they do then become belly up, and then we can net them.
Oh, interesting. And you just scoop them up. So somebody's got to be in the water with a good pair of waders on that don't leak, so they don't get shocked.
We have not for this particular shocking. Sometimes, absolutely, that's the case. Often, that's the case. For these large rivers, we have two people standing on the front of the jet boat with long-handled nets that
Oh,
are
okay.
insulators, and they just net them from the boat turn around and we have live wells full of water with oxygen that they to.
Okay, so once you net them, you take a look at them, you measure them, and put a fin clip on them and all that stuff. Then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we yep, ID the species. We measure the fish. Every fish that we capture, its length to the nearest millimeter. We take weights on a subset of fish. So 5 fish from kind of each 10 millimeter length bin that we're working with. So that's that is a centimeter, just under half an inch. From there, then we can get estimates of biomass and body condition, as well as relative weight. Relative weight is just a fisheries equation we use to compare the body condition, or essentially the kind of the fatness of a fish, to other water bodies where that same species exists.
Oh, interesting.
And we also pit tag all of the Yellowstone cutthroat trout that we encounter. And so I don't know if you're familiar with pit tags. They're used often in the salmon and steelhead world.
Okay.
It's a small passive integrated transponder is what PIT stands for. It's about 11 millimeters in length, just under a half an inch. And it's a glass tag that has a coil of wire in it. And when it gets charged by an electrical field, it sends a signal back to a reader, which has a unique identification code on it. And we have those readers set up at the tributaries, the main tributaries to the South Fork, so that we can see or look at things like when fish are entering a tributary, how often they may do it in a lifetime, and kind of how far they travel to different tributaries, among other things.
Huh? How far do they travel? What have you seen?
They will travel a pretty far distance, 10 to over 10 miles.
10 miles in like over a season or like a couple
No,
weeks?
in a short amount of time in the springtime.
Oh, wow. What are they doing? Why are they moving around so much?
Mostly to spawn.
Okay.
Yep. So they have pretty high site fidelity. They like to spawn where they were born or where they've spawned previously. So if they, just throughout the course of the summer and winter, they end up kind of finding themselves in a different place that they just forged their way along to, they will book it back home, so to speak, come spawning time.
Okay. And then they go back to where they want to eat other fish and bugs,
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you learned, like as an angler, have you like learned a lot about where fish actually hide? Like, have you been surprised you shock an area and a great big trout comes there? Like, gosh, I had no idea a fish would hold in that. What have you learned about that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's kind of a hidden perk of being a fish biologist.
Yeah, I'll say you're probably not allowed to enter any tournaments either, are you?
Oh, yeah. Maybe not. But no, you do. You do see, you will be out there, sampling fish, and you'll go to some kind of like laminar flow or an area that's doesn't appear to have a lot of the typical structure that you would identify as an angler. And it may be loaded with fish because there's some sort of hidden structure that's creating a different velocity or flow under the surface of the river. And so it does kind of make me look for different places or take a few casts in areas sometimes when I'm out fishing that I wouldn't have.
Something that doesn't look fishy might be fishy.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never know.
Here's Brian Oakland, founder of Got Fishing.
There's really no reason for an angler not to use Got Fishing when everything we do for you is free. We have the best trips around the world. We only work with the best outfitters, and we're definitely going to get you the best deal and the best dates guaranteed. That's why we have clients come back time and time again. We have Don with us on this trip. This has been his 6th fishing adventure with Got Fishing, and I think if you asked him, it is because of all the little things. We don't tell people, we ask questions. What is it that you're looking for? What would be most important to you? Who's coming with you? What's your experience level? And really at the end of the day, what is the most important aspect of this experience that you're looking to take home? And then from there, we just marry them up with some of the best lodges, let them take a look at 2 or 3 different options and pick what's going to be best for them.
Well, there you have it, folks. A pretty good case for choosing Got Fishing for your next big adventure. So what are you waiting for? Give Brian a shout or visit gotfishing.com. Hey, anglers, if you're on the hunt for fishing gear that's as tough as you are, look no further than Adamsbuilt Fishing Gear. Since 2014, Adamsbuilt has been the go-to choice for anglers who demand quality without breaking the bank. Their lineup of lightweight waders, high-quality nets, and meticulously designed fly boxes is second to none. But here's what really impressed me. Adamsbuilt stands behind their products like no other. Every single item is guaranteed to last. Yep, you heard that right. And get this, Adamsbuilt waders even come with a lifetime repair replace guarantee, with you only paying for shipping. Now that's a deal you can't beat. So why settle for gear that won't last? Make the smart choice and gear up with Adamsbuilt fishing gear today. Ask your local dealer for Adamsbuilt or visit www.adamsbuiltfishing.com and tell them Steve sent you from the Destination Angler podcast. So what are some of the tributaries that people ought to know about? You know, some of the other rivers in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other big two are the Henry's Fork and the Teton River, of course. Both of those are just, fantastic fisheries. They also are diverse, kind of morphologically similar to the South Fork of the Snake River, in the sense that down low in the Henry's Fork and the South Fork, you're fishing in much more kind of a open plain. The South Fork's quite braided there, but the Henry's Fork is more of a single channel, but there's a lot of braided sections. And then up high in the Henry's Fork, you get into much more basalt box canyons, like the
Yeah, I've
box
been up there.
Creek
Yeah.
that it's named. And the Teton River starts up high. It goes through the Teton Valley. It's a beautiful meandering meadow river, and then it drops down into the Teton Canyon. It becomes very bouldery, much more technical to row, and quite a bit different to fish. You're fishing kind of like large pockets.
Okay.
That are
Drive-by fishing.
the river. Yeah. And those are the big ones, but there's also, there's a ton of really amazing smaller rivers in the region. There's the Warm River and the Fall River, which are both tributaries to the Teton. There is the Big Lost River, which is, fantastic rainbow trout fishery. And then there are much smaller kind of streams or creeks like Birch Creek, which is another sinks district. Those just flow out into the basalt fields. They have never actually reached the Snake River itself.
Huh. What happens if they don't reach the snake? Do they just peter out?
They flow out into the basalt. We have these big basalt fields, the Craters of the Moon. It's one of our areas, state parks, and I think it actually might be it has some national something.
National park. Okay.
Scratch that part. It's not a national park, but they just go out into the basalt, and then they just flow down into the ground.
Really? Okay, I didn't know. I don't know I had that. I know Nevada has Humboldt does that, I believe, in Nevada. Yeah, that's cool. So, any other creeks you want to mention?
Oh, and then the tributaries to the South Fork of the Snake River are really amazing fisheries. We have McCoy Creek and Bear Creek, which are both tributaries to the South Fork, but they flow into Palisades Reservoir. And then Big Elk Creek, another one on the other side of the reservoir, can be tremendous fisheries as well.
Okay, how's public access on these? Because the Tetons, it's a little challenging, isn't it, to get on the Teton?
The Teton, especially in Teton Canyon, the upper sections. We have good access, fishing access sites and places to launch boats, but wade fishing can be difficult. By and large, though, the South Fork and the tributaries to the South Fork are on federal land, BLM or U.S. Forest Service. So access is pretty good.
Nice. Oh, that's cool. Okay. What's the scenery like on the South Fork?
Yeah, South Fork's beautiful. So below Palisades Dam is Swan Valley. It's an open, high elevation valley. This time of year, grasses are growing. It's incredibly green. It's very picturesque.
We're end of May right now for you guys listening.
Yep. And 15 miles or so that it flows through Swan Valley before it goes into the canyon itself is a meandering. There's a lot of side channels and fingers and islands that you can get out, wade, fish on. Once you get below there, you get into the canyon, which section is what we call it. And it's about a 24-mile section that is confined within a canyon. Much of it is roadless, so you get away from traffic. There's large cliffs, multiple really large islands with huge cottonwood forests. The whole South Fork of the Snake River has one of the largest riverine cottonwood forests still intact. It's really, really beautiful scenery.
Wow. Can I get a hook up with a guide who can do that 24 miles over like 2 days or something? Is that pretty common?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are a few outfitting services that have permanent camps set up in the canyon that they will float their clients down to, cook them a wonderful meal, hang out, and then you move on the next day, you take out.
That's super. Is the fishing better in the canyon? Is it harder? How's it different?
The fishing throughout the South Fork is great.
It's gold medal, right? I mean, it's a gold medal stream. You guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, the canyon section, it's certainly no worse. I mean, I love fishing the canyon section. It's my favorite place to fish. I like the overnight float aspect. There are still day float options. The shuttle, if you're just a recreational angler, is a little bit longer than your typical shuttle because you have to drive way down, cross the river, and then come way back up to the side.
Yeah, long shuttle means fewer people, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, the fishing in the canyon's fantastic. You can have this time of year and here in a little few weeks and months, you can have amazing PMD hatches. We're not too far off from the stonefly hatch, which can be really epic in the canyon section.
Is that early June when you get that?
Yeah, late June, July.
Late June. Oh, okay, late June. All right.
Yeah, we're a little bit later than like the Henry's Fork or the Teton, where it's starting to pop or is popping now.
Oh wow. Okay. How big are those guys?
They're big. The big salmon pteranarchies. They can get 2.5, 3, not 3 inches.
Okay.
But
salmon
two
flies
inches.
then.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. So that's good fishing food. So we're kind of getting to this already. So you were talking about kind of describing the South Fork, and I interrupted like 12 times. But go ahead, man, if you can, just kind of give us more of the overview of like, as you know, you're in the canyon now, then what's downriver from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So then after you get out of the canyon, it opens up into the Snake River plain. Again, there's more room for the river to meander. So you start getting into those braided channels, more kind of islands. You have, again, still a lot of cottonwoods around. Your immediate landscape next to you isn't as channelized or canyony, so you have kind of more of those wide vista views. It does become a little bit more developed down there as you're getting closer to Idaho Falls and larger towns. So there will be, a few more houses or properties along the river, but by and large, the South Fork isn't lined with a ton of houses. It's not super highly developed.
Okay.
And then you get a lot more woody debris, large trees and cottonwoods and stuff that have fallen. They've either floated down from the upper section or they've just fallen off of the banks of the islands and down in that section. So you have a lot more, kind of large wood and detritus, dead trees and stuff to fish around or float around if you're in a boat.
Okay. Yeah, I know the Henry's Fork because we fished just a little north of Idaho Falls in the summer. It was really hot. The water was just too hot, and I think the fish all took off. So it was too hot for me. We did, it wasn't good fishing. But you guys the South Fork is a tailwater, so is it still nice and cold water when you get into this plain?
It stays cold. It's certainly warmer than it is up high immediately below the dam, but no, it still stays really, really pretty cool. And you can have good fishing in that lower section throughout the entirety of the year.
All right. And is fish per mile, does it change? Give me the kind of the fish profile. What kinds of species are we running into as you go through, and what kind of quantities?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So fish per mile does decrease a little bit into the lower river. It's still very high. I mean, in the low 4,000s as opposed to the mids. But as far as species composition or trout kind of assemblage, when you start up high, right below the dam, there is a much higher concentration or proportion, I should say, of Yellowstone cutthroat trout and rainbow trout. And there are a lot of brown trout still up there, but they're not by any means the dominant species. So in 2024, in that upper kind of section of the river, we estimated there to be, or for the species composition to be 50% Yellowstone cutthroat trout, 34% rainbow trout, and about 16% brown trout.
Okay.
And then as you move downstream and you get below the canyon section, rainbow trout essentially become absent from the river. They're still there at very low densities, but we're talking about 100 fish per mile compared to about 1,500 or more at times in the upper section.
Why is that? Why the rainbows disappear? You see below the canyon, the rainbows are kind of gone?
Yeah, yep, below the canyon. I think there's a couple things that come into play. The water is slightly warmer throughout the year. Also, though, the primary spawning tributaries and then spawning habitat in the springtime exists in the upper river. So I think that they've just moved upstream and established themselves closer to where they will spawn.
Interesting.
And the flip side to that is the brown trout become the dominant trout species in the lower portion of the river.
That makes sense. You're talking about all the wood down there. That sounds like brown trout heaven.
Oh, it is. And it's, come fall and winter, it's the place to be if you want to catch big brown trout.
Okay, I'm curious, what's a good day on the South Fork? Decent angler, decent day. What's that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's such a tough question because like any river, it can vary based off.
I love asking the tough questions. People hate this question, totally. But we want to know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess to put it kind of into perspective, this time of year, and it's sort of kind of closing down, but when rainbow trout are congregating, I mean, you can catch a lot of fish in a day. We had an evening, this was last Monday, where we went out, fished for about 3 hours. I think we landed 20 fish of all species, including some, really nice 20 plus inch fish.
Dang, it's a good day.
It was a great day. And I guess just on an average day, any time of the year, if you average all of it, I think if you have we'll say a 10 fish day, you could be happy.
Yeah.
There's those, 50 fish days are out there. No question.
They are out there. What's your personal best on the South Fork?
On the South Fork? Oh, I've had 50 plus fish days.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And some of those were focusing on the foam lines and kind of the back eddies and getting a few of the smaller cutthroat that are feeding on dry flies. But
yeah. And what about size wise? What's your personal best?
Personal best, yeah. Well, I've been pretty fortunate. So I've hooked into or I've landed one brown trout that was just under 27 inches on the South Fork.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, that was my personal best brown trout. I've caught a couple rainbow trout over 22 inches. I haven't landed one of those real monsters yet. And I've caught a few Yellowstone cutthroat trout in that like 21 inch range, which are really nice. Big fish for the South Fork.
Yeah. Which of those three fish, those species, fight the best?
Oh, yeah. I think where you catch them has a lot to do with that, obviously. But yeah, if you catch a brown trout in a big hole that's next to some kind of faster moving water that's deep and they get into that water, that's going to be a big fight.
You got a problem.
Yeah, I mean, rainbow trout, they're super sporty. They'll tail walk on you. They'll get out of the water. They'll do multiple runs. They're really fun. And cutthroat trout too. I mean, if the water temperatures are cool, they're really sporty. And I often don't know if I have a rainbow or a cutthroat on until I get eyes on it. Yeah.
No kidding. I mean, because I've had some cutthroats that fight okay, but I've never put them up there with a brown or a rainbow.
No, totally. And I think your average fish, that's probably true, of each of the species. But certain times of year, when the water is cold, the cutthroat
they're interesting. Okay. Well, and what about cut bows?
Cut bows, yeah. I think they also fight excellent. I mean, and they kind of you have that intermediate where you might be catching a little more of them on the dry fly than you would a rainbow. And they might fight just a touch harder than a Yellowstone cutthroat trout.
Okay. So you do have cut bows in the South Fork?
Oh, yes. Yep, we do. Yep. Okay. The hybridization occurs frequently between the cutthroat trout and rainbow trout.
Yeah, and that's kind of a problem, isn't it?
It is. It is a problem for the native cutthroat trout.
Yeah. All right, we're going to get into that in a minute, but I want to ask some more questions. So public access laws in Idaho, you guys have a ton of state land, one of the highest in the country. What are your public access laws?
Yeah, so the stream channel, the stream bed is owned by the state, where you're able to be below the water line in any navigable stream in Idaho. And I believe this probably isn't exactly correct, but I believe our navigable stream definition is a stream that can float an 8-foot by 8-inch in diameter log without the assistance of a human. So
Back to the logging days.
yeah, and that's a pretty small stream in reality, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of openness to interpretation depending on how you think about it.
I guess.
So no, we're really fortunate where we can fish a lot of waters because of those laws.
Okay, that's great. And then on the South Fork, do people wade that, or is it almost always from a boat?
It's certainly easier to fish from a boat. It's a large river, and there's portions that are pretty difficult to wade to and to get to kind of those areas where you'd want to cast as a fly angler. But there are areas where wade fishing is accessible and is common. Up in Swan Valley and down lower at Lorenzo, it's one of the areas, the lowest boat ramp on the river. Both of those areas of the South Fork have pretty decent wade fishing, especially when water levels are lower. So come like the fall and winter months.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like if you can get a boat, maybe you're going to have it, because it's such a big river. I got to believe a boat would be the way to go. But
yeah, I think if you have access to a boat, it's certainly the way to go. It's a really textbook drift boat fishery.
is it? Okay. Does it get crowded?
It can, absolutely. And Memorial Day kind of marks the unofficial beginning of the season. It seems like over here, it's when people really get excited. They get their boats out, and then from Memorial Day through the beginning of October, there's going to be quite a few boats on the river.
Okay. Yeah. So I did read somewhere that 300,000 anglers, campers, hikers, and boaters and other recreationists use the South Fork each year. And I was like, oh, does it feel like that to you when you're out there?
It can. But then, if you go there in July, say during the salmon fly hatch, it can be
Busy.
really busy and almost overwhelming. But on the flip side, if you go there kind of past the shoulder seasons or into the winter, you can have the river to yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's, dependent on the kind of time of the year, but it can get busy.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the fishing's good enough where it might be worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm just looking on trout routes. I'm seeing a lot of public access along way up towards the dam. Looks like it's all public access, right?
Yes.
You're talking about that. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been stocked in years, right?
Nope. I believe not since 1984.
Okay. How about that? Hey, take us through the hatch chart. What are the major hatches? You talked about, I think salmon flies. What else have you got?
Yeah. So I guess we'll just kind of start in June, so to speak. This time of year, you can still see some caddises, some PMDs could be happening. Here in a few weeks, you'll get the salmon fly hatch. That it overlaps, starts a little bit sooner, peaks a little sooner than the golden stonefly hatch, but they do overlap. Then the golden stonefly hatch is going to extend out into kind of August or so, it just depending on the year and the weather. And at that point, it starts moving over into like mahoganies. Mahogany duns become one of the dominant hatches, and then we'll transition into blue wing olives once you get into the fall.
What about terrestrials, hoppers?
Oh, of course. I didn't even mention terrestrials and hoppers. Yeah, middle of the summer, there's a really good terrestrial fishery, or later in the summer, I should say, August, September. You'll have hoppers and beetles out there and ants.
Are you typically fishing on top? What's your setup typically?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if the fish are really keyed in, you can use using a foam bodied pattern. I mean, I know that chubbies are super popular because they're easy to see, and you can essentially, put an anchor under them. They float so well.
Yeah.
So that's always a really popular one. Sometimes if fishing's a little bit slower, because those fish are starting to get fairly smart by that time of the year. There's been a lot of people on the river. They've seen a lot of patterns. I'll start kind of going old school and get into some more like elk hair or deer hair based patterns for my hoppers.
Oh, okay.
Well, like Stan's hoppers kind of variants. I feel like getting a little bit different, but still having fishing the general hatch that's occurring can be effective during the terrestrial.
Okay. And what X are you using on some of those? I don't know, like a mahogany. Are you going on a 5X or farther than that, or what are you doing?
No, 5X is typically about as small as I go. Sometimes if fishing's really tricky, you'll have to go smaller, or like during the PMD hatch when they've seen a lot of dry flies and they're picky. Yeah, you have to do everything to get them to entice them. But I try not to go too small on the South Fork because you always have a chance to hook into a big fish. Actually, so I had a friend from North Carolina who's a very avid angler, and he came out, visited me last summer. He was actually working in Utah. He's also in the fisheries world. And there's one section of the river kind of once you're getting, 5 or 6 miles into the canyon, above Dry Canyon, which is one of the names of the campgrounds, the BLM campgrounds along the river. And it's also just an offshoot canyon to the main stem canyon. But right above that section, there's about a 200-yard section on the river where a lot of trees have fallen in. Also, there's a island in the kind of middle of the river, so it pushes a lot of water river left and creates just sort of the perfect conditions for streamer fishing for that 200 meters. So I always have a streamer ready, kind of regardless of what's happening elsewhere on the river for this section. And he tied on a streamer. I was rowing at this point. We were doing pretty well that day to this point, but we hadn't caught anything massive. But he made, the perfect cast in the perfect spot, and a big, 22 plus inch brown trout with shoulders, really great body condition. Just hit it like brown trout do. It took about 2 kicks, and it broke his leader and tippet so hard, that it ricocheted back and shot over his right shoulder.
Is that right?
And I was like, oh man, like that was a great fish. Like, what are you using? It's like, oh, this is like 6X.
6X on a streamer?
I'm like, no way, man. Not on a streamer, and certainly not on this river. Like,
no,
so,
you don't even need to. A selective fish on a streamer, I don't think you got to go down maybe 4X, 3X. What do you think?
No, I agree.
You just got lazy. You forgot to switch it, probably.
3X
I've
or
done
4X.
that. I'm just too lazy.
Probably something like that.
Dang, you lost it. Did you catch the fish again and get your fly back?
Yeah, no, not that time. But I have done that before.
Have you? Really?
Yeah, it was a Nadram's fish with a steelhead, and I had foul hooked it one day, and then the next day I caught it upstream. It was pretty amazing.
Did you? The fly was still in his mouth?
It was on its near its dorsal fin, but yeah.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
My dad, quick story, my dad was fishing the Yellowstone. This is back in the 90s. I went and fished with him, and Rodney Campbell was his guy. He lives in Bozeman, and they caught this fish, and Rodney's like, that fish, it's like he's got a beard. What is the deal? And they're like, it's a bearded fish. The thing had 4 grasshoppers hanging out of its mouth. Not kidding. My dad was like, I'm the guy that caught the fish that broke off 4 other guys, but it had 4 grasshopper patterns hanging in its mouth.
And he was still eating them. That's amazing.
Still eating them, right? I wonder how long it takes for a hook to dissolve, but maybe not even a season. They probably just wiggle themselves out, I imagine, after a while.
Yeah, I think so. And many people are fishing barbless in the fly fishing community. So yeah, they work themselves out. But
that's wild.
So one of the things we do on the river is an angler incentive program. It's to incentivize the the harvest of rainbow trout. And the way that to do that, we tag a subset of rainbow trout with just a tiny, tiny coated wire tag. It's about the size of a piece of 0.7 millimeter lead or 0.5 millimeter lead, the one that you'd break off on accident type when you're writing with a mechanical pencil. I mean, it's very small. It takes a microscope or a really strong magnifying glass to even read it. But we tag that into the tip of their nose, their cartilage, and that way anglers can't see it, but they can turn the heads into us. We can scan them, and if it has a reward tag, we award the angler the money.
Oh, you give money?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of like a lottery ticket? I might win some money?
Yeah, no, exactly. You might. Any rainbow might be $1,000 fish.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. But in that process, we're scanning these rainbow trout heads with a really delicate or sensitive metal detector, and we about half the time that we think we have a tag, it's just the, very tip of a hook that's got lodged into the cartilage, and then the rest of the hook's gone or broken off. Sometimes you'll find like a size, 20 whole little fly or whatever, but then it's actually just grown kind of into the snout of the fish as it's grown.
Really? That's wild. So it would not pass the metal detector in the airport, would it?
No, yeah,
That's
it's like having
impressive.
a titanium knee or something.
That's great. Yeah, like a titanium knee. So, all right, well, let's shift gears. Let's talk about that because, I was reading one of the Idaho Fish and Game report, maybe for 2024, talked about the South Fork as one of the most important Yellowstone cutthroat trout populations in their historical range. And you guys are evaluating the feasibility of removing rainbows from the system. I got to believe you got some guides calling you up on that one. What's the story? So why are
Yeah,
you doing that?
absolutely. I'll kind of take it from the beginning of
Yeah.
our rainbow trout management on the river. So starting in the 90s, we started to see an increase in rainbow trout distribution and abundance throughout the South Fork of the Snake River. They were essentially, while they had been stocked in the South Fork since the 50s, they had never really established in the South Fork like they had in the Henry's Fork. Beginning in the 90s, though, after we had, as a department, and especially as this region in the fisheries, or the fisheries department in this region had shifted towards more native species conservation, we had started to see an increase in rainbow trout abundance. And so the first step to kind of mitigate that was the construction of 4 weirs on the 4 primary spawning tributaries to the South Fork of the Snake River: Burns Creek, Pine Creek, Palisades Creek, and Rainy Creek. And these weirs were constructed so that we could remove every rainbow trout that was running up the tributary to spawn from the river and allow all Yellowstone cutthroat trout to move upstream and spawn in the tributaries. That proved to be really successful for the tributaries, but the trends that we had seen in the main stem continued into the early 2000s. Rainbow trout continued to increase. So at that point, we knew that we had to kind of add additional management actions to kind of conserve the Yellowstone cutthroat trout population. So beginning in the early 2000s, we had really wide sweeping regulation changes. The fishery, which had historically had a closed portion of the season, or had just a season on it, was opened so that anglers could fish year round. The cutthroat trout fishery became catch and release only, and the department removed the bag limit on rainbow trout completely. Then a few short years after that, we also incorporated the angler harvest incentive program that I was referencing earlier with the tags.
Yeah.
And that had leveled off the increase in rainbow trout abundance for a few years. But from 2015 to 2018, where we had just some good environmental years, the water levels and temperatures were favorable to spring spawning trout species. We saw a huge increase in rainbow trout in the main stem, so much so that they actually became more abundant than Yellowstone cutthroat trout.
More abundant. Okay.
And this indicated that we needed to incorporate further management actions. And that's when we began kind of evaluating the effectiveness of, or not the effectiveness no more, but the feasibility of manually removing rainbow trout from the system using jet boat electrofishing.
Oh.
We ran some kind of test years, some field trials in 2018, 2019. We determined that with the resources we had, we could actually attempt to do this. So then we set up a project where we would go out and attempt to remove 30% of the rainbow trout per year for a 5-year period, which is the generation time of trout, Yellowstone cutthroat trout and rainbow trout on the South Fork of the Snake River. Yeah, to evaluate if it benefits Yellowstone cutthroat trout.
Okay.
And so since 2021, we've been doing just that, removing 30% of the rainbow per year.
What have you found? Is it helping?
So far, it's helping. Absolutely. We've seen a steady increase in the Yellowstone cutthroat trout population each year. They're filling that kind of niche, or that space that's left over by removing biomass from the river, the rainbow trout biomass. And so far in 2024, we estimated there to be 50% of the trout in the river were Yellowstone cutthroat trout. And this is the first time that 50% of the trout in the river were native Yellowstone cutthroat trout since previous to 2009 when we started the angler incentive program.
Okay.
And so we have one more year this year to do that. And then we can quantify our results and we can determine how effective it was both in just numbers of fish as well as introgression. So have we reduced the amount of hybrids that are being produced by?
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you tell the guy that loves catching hybrids and rainbows?
Yeah, well, they'll still be in the river. We're not going to eradicate rainbow trout. We have no intention to eradicate rainbow trout.
Okay.
We're just trying to reduce those numbers to levels that they were similar in the 90s or previously. Well, previous, I guess, would be eradication. So similar to what they were in the 90s, just to give Yellowstone cutthroat trout the chance to become the dominant trout species again.
Have there been heated debates about this? You're going to I don't know, meetings that you call, I don't know how that works, but I know you go talk to a lot of different fishing groups. What are the conversations like?
Absolutely. It was very unpopular with some user groups of the river.
Yeah.
In mostly the guiding and outfitting community, which is, completely understandable.
They're afraid that the numbers are going to drop off when you start removing a bunch of rainbows. But are you finding that the cutthroat are filling the void pretty quickly?
Exactly. Yeah, they were worried about that. Yeah, and we've seen that they have already filled the void. We're back to the total trout abundance that we had previous to or starting the program.
Okay. Interesting.
So they've definitely done that. And yeah, they were very vocal. And so I should add, the first 3 years of this project, we were using jet boat electrofishing. That was very unpopular with the outfitting community and the guiding community because it was a large presence. We would be out there in the springtime running up and down the river for at least 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks, depending on how long it took for us to get our goal. Absolutely. And it's a loud outfit. It's a operation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so we were receptive. We really wanted to work with them. We realized as a department, like this wasn't maybe the best methodology to go about this particular, our end goal.
Because of the public optics on it?
Yeah, but public optics and in particular this one industry. So Brett Haigh, our fisheries manager, and Matt Pierre,
he's been on my show.
Supervisor, worked with the guides, and we made a deal where we wouldn't remove fish using jet boat electrofishing if they'd be willing to harvest fish during their client's season.
Okay.
2 of the outfitters, the South Fork Lodge and the Lodge at Palisades Creek, have agreed to participate.
Okay.
And we were able to meet our goal in 2024 by just angling harvest alone without actually having to get out there and remove fish using electrofishing. And we're continuing with that too this year. And we're already have harvested a ton of rainbow trout. We're on track to meet our target.
There you go. So, all right. So Henry's Fork, it didn't used to be rainbows, right? And it is now. Was it cutthroat?
Yes.
100 years ago? Okay. So why not target the Henry's Fork? Why are you guys, doing just the South Fork?
Absolutely. Well, South Fork, the main reason is the South Fork still has a intact, viable Yellowstone cutthroat trout population.
Okay. That makes sense.
While they're not completely eradicated from the Henry's Fork by any means, they exist at such low abundances that it would be an incredibly difficult or lofty task to try to reverse those trends.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I've noticed, I feel like some of the rivers where in the native fish population, I get it, it's cool, but I feel like sometimes the fisheries people pay attention to one river and not to the other, and I always kind of wonder why. And so that for the Henry's Fork, that makes sense. And I don't know. I think a cutbow is the best fighting trout there is. I mean, they're just amazing, and I like that you're leaving some of them in there, because I love catching native fish, but I also like catching a tail walking, 16-inch cutbow that takes me down to my backing. I've had that happen.
Absolutely.
they're monsters,
Yeah.
So
No,
I can kind of see both sides of this one.
yeah.
What's the public? How do people feel about it now?
The guiding community certainly feels much better about it.
Good.
I mean, there are a lot of people that have in that community, and I would say the vast majority of them have really strong conservation ethics, and they understand the importance of native species on the landscape.
Yeah.
And some of their concerns, many of their concerns, were less about our goal or of removing the rainbow trout 30% per year, and more about the methodology we were using
Oh,
electric.
really? Okay. So they don't mind killing fish in front of their clients, right? Like to help you guys.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'd go quite that far. I think
Okay.
I think that's we as a fly community over the last 50 years or so have really created an
Yeah.
excellent ethos of catch and release angling.
Right.
So, I don't think they're necessarily stoked about it on that sense, but I do think that they, I hope they are excited about being part of the conservation effort as opposed to just sitting on the sideline.
I mean, the fastest way to have a guy take you to their worst spots is to say, mind if we keep a few?
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
exactly.
I mean, those are their business partners out there,
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, let's shift gears. Okay, so I was on your website, then I was Googling you, and I saw this posting for a fisheries technician. I want to read some of this. These positions require extensive use of boats on large rivers and lakes, wading in cold, swift streams. Travel is typically daily, but may extend for periods of up to 8 days to conduct fish sampling field work in remote areas. Work and camp in extreme weather conditions, hike long distances greater than 9 miles in rough terrain, operate ATVs and four-wheel drive vehicles in steep, rough terrain, carry lift equipment up to 50 pounds with or without reasonable accommodations. Man, sounds like a job for the young.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a special guy? You have trouble finding people, or are people like, man, this sounds great. I want to do this. I mean, when I was 20, I'd probably be like, I'm all over this. But what are you finding?
Yeah. We're fortunate that, there's a lot of young, enthusiastic people that love the outdoors, and especially on the fisheries side, love fishing, but they love science, and this is the perfect job to kind of find that intersection.
Yeah.
So I certainly, I try to high grade and weed out people before they even apply by those postings. But no, I've been fortunate in my career to find really good gung ho technicians that are smart people and hard workers.
Yeah. Were you one? I mean, is that what you did before you had this job?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. You liked it, huh?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I spent probably too many years as a technician traveling around.
What are some of your more epic experiences as a technician? It sounds like, remote areas. Imagine you're running into bears and weather and I don't know what else.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everything like that. One time we hiked up, I was part of a crew that was working on high mountain lake surveys. So we would go up and we'd monitor, the fish populations, kind of get an estimate of relative abundance. We'd set gill nets out or catch per unit effort, as well as do some amphibian surveys and then some habitat surveys.
What's amphibian? You like snorkeling?
Oh, sorry. No, looking for frogs and salamanders.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right, more basic than I thought. Okay.
But we had gone on one of those hikes that was a little over 9 miles or so, or right around there.
That's a hike. Yeah.
And we had a bunch of sampling gear, so we had distributed kind of our equipment amongst the three of our backpacks, but all of our food was in one person's backpack, and it ended up being in one person's tent. But while we were out sampling, almost I would say a pack of rabid squirrels, to be hyperbolic. Squirrels had gotten into and eaten or drug off or destroyed almost all of our food. We were out there.
Oh, jeez.
And so we made do. We got creative with what we had, but that was just the interaction where how even these little animals can.
Squirrels. I thought maybe you'd say a bear.
I know that's what everyone would think.
I don't suppose you like shoot a sage, some kind of a grouse or a rabbit or something in a desperate situation. You probably can't tell me that over this podcast, but
yeah, no, everything's always ethical and on the books.
Yeah. Did you guys have to go back early?
No, we stuck it out. We were hungry, but I think we ended up getting a burger or pizza or something. And
really? Hope you had some Cliff Bars on you or something.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Well, When you get these candidates on the phone, can you kind of tell over the phone, yeah, this guy isn't what I'm looking for. He's not going to be able to hack this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Not always. Not always. I guess I won't say absolutely. Sometimes, more often than not, people just don't sell themselves well enough. I mean, it just happens. They're young. It's newer into the interview process. And so I might be on the fence about it, but we end up about kind of their capabilities in these backcountry settings. We hire them and they're excellent. That's usually they surprise you positively. Sometimes, yeah, you do. You can ask like a good interview question for these type of jobs, or describe your boots to me, just to hear.
Describe your boots. Really?
Mm-hmm.
What do you learn from that?
You learn a lot. You learn if they have boots. You learn how to use them.
Yeah.
If they care about their equipment in the sense that they're just taking care of it, paying attention, and you also then kind of know. I mean, can they hike? Can they do?
Yeah. They need to be a little beat up, don't they?
Yeah, they need to be a little beat up. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was passed down to me from a previous fisheries biologist. So I stole that one from an interview that I was the candidate in.
Oh, okay. You don't ask them like, why are manhole covers round?
I don't ask that one.
Okay. Right. So I saw something else about you, that you've done some studies, and I love these effects of angler fight time and air exposure to warm water fishes. That's one. Effects of hook type and hook setting types on trout in streams. It's interesting. And effects of angling fish during high temperature weather.
Yeah.
Tell us about those. Those are like right up our alley here.
Yeah, no, they're truly fisheries focused applied science. They were really fun. So I was the technician for those studies. I was in the field either assisting or conducting or leading the field work. The lead author, primary author on the studies was Kevin Meyer. He's a principal research biologist here for the Department of Fish and Game. Absolutely brilliant guy who has really made a career of asking these angling specific questions and answering them with sound science. And so, yep, about, 10 years ago or a little bit longer. I mean, I'm sure you know, as an avid fly angler, the kind of keep them wet movement came out. Anglers were getting harassed, might be a little bit extreme, but we're certainly getting criticized for taking pictures of fish, right?
Yep.
Holding them out of the water, or for
squeezing
just
them. Yep.
Exactly. Or just angling in general. And so we really wanted to determine what are the effects of catching a fish, fighting it, holding it out of water, and putting it in, which the department and University of Idaho graduate students did. They answered those questions. But then the next step was like, if we know how long it takes to hold a fish out of water, would be when it's to have negative effects. We know how long different fight times affect the kind of survival of fish. What are anglers actually doing? And so that's what the warm water angler exposure and fight time project was focused on. We wanted to see, are the general public even getting close to those numbers that would create kind of added mortality or fishing mortality to that individual fish.
Yeah.
The fish. And so it was a really fun project. It was we would go out and fish and watch other anglers fish surreptitiously. And when we saw someone hook into a fish, I'd hit a timer, time how long it would take them to land that fish. And then once they landed the fish, we would time how long it took them to actually handle it and release it. And for warm water species, which are far less sensitive in general, not always, than our cold water salmonids, anglers were not handling them anywhere close to the amount of time that would create increased angler mortality.
Okay, get them off quickly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like, I think, an average of 13 seconds, I believe, for those fish, which is pretty quick. For salmonids, it takes a little bit longer. But it was interesting to me going through that data and looking at that. It was actually fly anglers like myself end up fighting fish longer, and they end up holding them out of the water longer too.
Really?
Oh
my gosh.
Traditional kind of conventional.
Yeah. What did you see? Do you have an average, amount of time people held fish out of the water?
I can't remember it off the top of my head for salmon and steelhead because I wasn't directly involved in that study.
Yeah.
It was less than a minute for trout, for resident rainbow trout, cutthroat trout.
Yeah.
And it was a little over a minute for steelhead.
Okay. Wow. What is the rule of thumb? Maybe it's just a sense from you. What should anglers be thinking about? How many seconds out of water?
Yeah. I mean, this isn't the perfect example, but I kind of think about it as like, how long can you hold your breath underwater? And try to do about half of that. So
After I run a marathon?
yeah, yeah, exactly. That increases at certain times. But no, I kind of try to be as fast as you can, but you don't want to be going so fast that you're handling the fish incorrectly. And so, yeah, I mean, I take my time after you net the fish, you wet your hands, you can hold the fish, pull the net out, take a picture if it's a nice fish and it's picture worthy, and then release it. And if you have a fish out of water for 30 seconds or so, it will not increase the chance that fish will die post catch and release, especially if it's cool out and the conditions are favorable to the fish.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my personal rule of thumb is just to be brief. And if you can just, do it in a few seconds, go for it. But
Okay, what about you see guys on Instagram who are holding a bigger trout and the trout's body's kind of like blubbering over their fingers and it looks like they're squeezing them. How much damage are you really doing to a fish?
yeah, absolutely. You can. I mean, fish, they've evolved to live in water, kind of live in a neutral buoyancy system. And so when they're out of water, their muscle structure and their skeletal structure just isn't designed to support that way. So you can hurt fish. You can create spinal injuries, or even by holding a fish in the middle and having it kind of sag off, or
Yeah.
or mishandling it. And you can also cause contusions or spinal injuries by squeezing or holding a fish too hard.
What about the internal organs? Because if you're underneath them, aren't you squeezing their organs? It looks like you might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think typically it's more of like a spinal injuries.
Is it really? Okay. Gosh, I hadn't thought of that.
Really to work on, or not to work on, to worry about.
I mean, so if you get a really big fish, I mean, this happens like, maybe once a year to somebody. If you're lucky, you've got a fish in the mid 20s or something. I'm not picking the thing up because I'm going to hurt it. Or is there a way you can handle that fish and not mess it up?
Oh no, you can absolutely safely handle that fish. Try to use two hands. You see the double hand pictures where people are holding two fish, they're squeezing them in the middle. Those are, a little bit, that's maybe not the best way to handle a large fish. Yeah, I personally, when it's a big fish like that, when we're sampling it, when I'm measuring or doing something, I will always have kind of my index finger and my thumb tucked up under its pelvic fins. And then I have a firm grasp on its caudal fin, around, or its caudal peduncle more so. So right at the kind of the skinniest point right before the fin. Exactly.
So there, and then up near the front of the fish.
Exactly. Yeah. Just kind of the classic hold, but I do wrap my hand around the top just so that you have a more firm grip.
Oh, from the bottom, your hand can come up around the top.
Or just like, I have it like, just like this, around.
Oh, I see.
If it's the fin. Okay. If you're taking a picture, I like to have my hand out of the way, but.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's super helpful. I think it's the first time I've talked about all this on my show. So that's really cool. All right. I want to ask you about your life growing up in Idaho, grew up in Toledo, Ohio, no trout streams, right? We just had muddy creeks full of pollution. But you grew up in Idaho. What was that like growing up in Idaho? Because you guys were all over the state as kids, weren't you? Recreating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was amazing. I mean, I think as fortunate as I feel, I still probably don't know how lucky I was. Yeah, I grew up in a really outdoor-oriented family. My dad is a wildlife biologist also. He's retired now. He grew up in eastern Idaho, over here where I live now in Idaho Falls. My mom grew up in northern Idaho. So we had family both sides kind of the state, and we were in the middle. But both of them really made it a point for all of us kids to experience and see all of what Idaho had. So yeah, Idaho has, the most rivers of any state in the coterminous United States, the continental United States. We were whitewater rafting and kayaking frequently. We have great skiing in the winter, so we spend a ton of time, both resort and backcountry skiing. I really picked up rock climbing kind of about when I was in high school and so. My dad was a mountaineer in his younger years, so I also learned that from him. But we really focused on fly fishing. I mean, that was my dad's. It is my dad's, and it has been forever. His biggest passion. He had inherited that to me, and that's still my favorite thing to do when I have time. Yeah, and so we would come over to the South Fork of the Snake River 2 or 3 times a year to visit my grandparents. Was the focus, but really it was to do an overnighter in the canyon on the South Fork.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Portions of the Henry's Fork.
So you had a drift boat as a kid?
Yeah. My dad had a Keith Steele Mackenzie River dory. I think it was a 16 and a half or 17-foot wooden drift boat that he purchased from Teton Valley Lodge, which is one of the outfitters that have a license on the South Fork. He spent a couple seasons guiding for them in the 70s.
Did he? In the 70s? No, check it out. Huh. So then are you in high school? I mean, I'd be playing hooky. I never did play hooky, but I think I would be if I lived in Idaho. How about you?
Yeah, there was a bit of that. Absolutely.
Okay. Like the hatches on, like the, strong, salmon fly hatch. It's like, I got to go out and hit this.
Yeah, exactly. Or another, or chucker hunting was really good that particular year. And I maybe missed the last half day of school in the fall.
Okay. Well, that's not too bad.
No.
Yeah.
So
teachers might turn a blind eye to that one. And then, so what's the deal, man? You went to Bozeman to get your, is that your graduate degree, and took a few extra years getting that done? Is that what happened there?
Yeah, that was my undergraduate degree.
Undergraduate, okay.
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit of playing hooky. I got a little obsessed with the fly fishing and skiing around Bozeman, so there was a good powder day or a hatch occurring.
Yeah.
In the spring or fall, it's pretty tempting. But no, I finished my degree, and then I loved the area. I loved all of the recreation and the people up there. And so I just worked temporary technician positions.
Did you? Okay.
Many of them in Idaho, and then would come back and spend the rest of the year in Bozeman.
How about that? Is this before it got bougie?
It was, I think,
getting there.
It was getting there. Yeah. So I was there in 2012 until 2021. So I saw a lot of the change.
Yeah, but there's some nice brew pubs in Bozeman, isn't there?
Oh, there's some great.
I mean, really good. It's like cool town. All right, rapid fire questions. You ready? I got a bunch of them. Okay. Favorite hobbies besides fishing?
Rock climbing and
rock climbing.
Skiing's number one. So.
Skiing. Okay. What's always in your fishing pack that's not fishing gear?
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Well, always trash bags. I try to feel like it's my duty to pick up a bunch of trash.
Good for you.
Chapstick. It's probably the only time I put chapstick on is when I'm on the river. That seems to be the case.
That's good. Favorite snack on the water?
Favorite snack on the water? Well, lately me and my partner, when we go out, we've been doing kind of charcuterie boards, getting a little bit bougie.
Dang.
Out there.
Really?
Yeah, that's been fun. Yeah, and they're quick and it's always tasty, and that salt tastes good with a cold beer. But I wouldn't lie if I didn't say that a slice of cold pizza tastes pretty good when you're on a drift boat too.
Okay. How do you pack cold pizza? Do you wrap it in foil, or what do you do?
Oh, I just throw it in foil, or we have these like beeswax kind of fabric things that you can wrap around your food.
There's a tip. I haven't heard of that. Dream fly fishing destination you haven't hit yet?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Kamchatka Peninsula.
Yeah, okay.
I think that would be, if I could go anywhere with, freedom to roam, would probably be my first choice.
Don't roam too far. You might not come back.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Russia, right?
Yeah.
Most ridiculous thing you've ever seen on the water?
Yeah. Oh, man. I've seen a lot of ridiculous stuff being out there. Just, people not using all of their full brain capacity. I've seen people drive trucks and four-wheelers and UTVs into the river or get stuck in the river, roll them. Seen a couple submerged drift boats. I think, this isn't super crazy, but one time my dad and I were fishing and we saw a golden eagle swoop down, picked up a coot off the river, flew back up to a rock and was, starting to eat it. And a magpie, not a raven, a magpie, swooped down and hit the golden eagle just right in the back, square on the back with its feet. And the golden eagle dropped the coot and jumped around in a circle. And the magpie swooped around and grabbed the coot. It could barely fly with its bait and took off down the canyon. And the golden eagle, chased it for about 200 yards and then gave up. It figured it could go catch something else.
The magpie, a little magpie, I mean, not super small, but a golden eagle is like the biggest eagle around.
Oh, yeah. It was, 10, 12 times its size. It was a pretty,
holy smokes,
pretty funny thing to watch.
That's amazing. All right, beer or bourbon?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'll say beer. I love bourbon in the evening, but I love a good IPA.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll be right over. Rivers or lakes?
Rivers.
Okay. Moment in nature that took your breath away.
Yeah. One thing I think, because I didn't know it, and when I moved to Montana, I was unaware of katabatic winds and how they can affect cloud structure. And sometimes they create these waves of clouds that just follow a mountain range right along the ground. And
cool.
That's by far one of the coolest things in nature I've ever seen. When an entire mountain range is just covered in a cloud that's flowing over it, but the rest of the sky is blue. It's pretty incredible.
What's the number one skill you have to be a good biologist?
That's a great one. I think you have to be, I always tell my techs, I guess this is a cheat to your answer, but I think of this myself, but I think the three things to be successful as a fisheries biologist and probably most careers is you have to be honest, you have to work hard, and you can't be a jerk. Just don't be a jerk.
That's perfect, man, because that'll get you in trouble with everybody. You'll get a bad rap, won't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Coworkers in public, everyone. Nobody likes a jerk.
Even if you're right and you're a jerk, you're not, you're a jerk.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good for you. All right. So what would your 16-year-old self think of your life now?
Yeah. I think I'd be pretty happy with it.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I always, yeah, very much so. I knew this growing up with a family that we're in wildlife biology. I knew that it was an option. I didn't always know it's what I necessarily wanted to do because it honestly just sort of felt like a way of life. I was already out there helping with projects my dad had going on. Whenever we were driving around or talking about stuff, it always had a ecology or a biology perspective. So I'm quite happy.
Yeah, good for you. You seem like it. You seem like the right guy for the right job.
Well, I hope so. I think so.
There you go. All right, we might have already covered this, but your favorite shore lunch?
Oh yeah, yep. The charcuterie.
Charcuterie.
That's been real fun now. Getting a little fancy with it now that we're out on the South Fork.
Now that you got that cheesecloth stuff, you can take practically anything out there with you, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty handy stuff.
I got to look into that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Cheesecloth, huh? Where do you get that at REI or where do you get that stuff?
I think we got ours at the co-op. REI probably sells it, but yeah, we have just at our local co-op in Moscow where we live there.
What's your favorite place in the South Fork area to get a bite to eat at the end of the day, maybe something to drink?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the Roadhouse in Swan Valley. It's recently switched owners, but the food is still amazing. It has a really good atmosphere, big, full bar, great food. A lot of the guides hang out there in the evenings or afternoons. Just downriver from there, the South Fork Lodge has one of the coolest bars with one of the most beautiful views of a river that I've been to. It's really awesome and worth checking out. And they have a fantastic restaurant if you're looking for a little bit more of a fine dining experience.
Yeah, that's a pretty famous place. I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah.
That's great. Hey, man. Sage, thanks for being on the show. You did a great job.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, they can email me at sageunsworth.idfg.idaho.gov, the one that we've been using. So if you could share that somehow, that'd be more than welcome to.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. I'm sure you will have many. Folks, thank you for listening to another episode of The Destination Angler. And we'll post Sage's contact info on my website. And hopefully get some pictures from Sage, and we'll put those out on social media for y'all. As always, you can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaig@destinationanglerpodcast.com. If you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by our Brothers Fountain. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.